Greetings, Cleveland, and welcome to Creative Focus, the show that illuminates some of Cleveland's most talented and creative artists across the genres of dance, film, music, theater, and visual arts. I'm your host, Cornell Calhoun III, and I'm thrilled to be at the Cleveland History Center for the exhilarating exhibition, Hollywood on the Cuyahoga. And my guest today is the Vice President of Experience Design at the Western Reserve Historical Society, Mr. Dennis Barrie. Let's check it out. Dennis, welcome to Creative Focus. I'm honored to be here.
I'm happy to be here as well.
What is Hollywood on the Cuyahoga?
Hollywood on the Cuyahoga is an exhibition about the history of filmmakers and filmmaking in Northeast Ohio. So the idea is that it literally traces that story all the way back to Thomas Edison, who made a film here in 1897. It's only 45 seconds long. All the way up to the people who are working today, the very famous ones like Anthony and Joe Russo, who are the biggest filmmakers in the world right now, to many other people who are working here on independent films and everybody in between. So the idea was to capture that history and to let people know that there is a proud history of filmmaking in Northern Ohio, and that it's a big industry in our area.
Talk a little bit about that history of film in Cleveland.
Well, it goes all the way, as I said, it goes all the way back to Thomas Edison, but when movie making was just beginning, it was all over, okay? It hadn't moved to Hollywood until the 20s it starts to move there. So before that time, there were filmmakers in Cleveland and Detroit and Newark and wherever trying their hand at making movies. And we had a couple of film studios on Euclid Avenue in those mansions. The Brodsky brothers were making feature films, not just little short, independent films, but actual movies with plots. And there's one right here that was made in 1916. The Cleveland Swells, as I call them, were asked to perform in an actual feature film and play themselves being hoodwinked by a European vamp. It's really a good film. It's called Perils of Society.
37 minutes, right?
37 minutes, which is a long time in those days.
Right.
And anyway, Cleveland was the center of film posters for all the big studios in the teens, the 20s, the 30s, the 40s. A lot of actors come out of the theaters. Vaudeville here in Cleveland, like Bob Hope came out of vaudeville. And they start to come out of theaters like Caramoo and the Cleveland Playhouse and go into moving pictures. And all this is happening in the teens, 20s, 30s, and 40s. And there's so many people involved in the film industry that came out of this area. It's hard to actually portray them all. We're here in the opening gallery for Hollywood on the Cuyahoga, and this gallery is devoted to early filmmaking in Northeast Ohio. So behind me you see some of the equipment, like an early Edison projector here where people watched movies, to costumes that were used in vaudeville and silent movies, and a camera from that early age of filmmaking when they didn't have little portable cameras like all of you do.
What do you love about film? Because I can tell you're really into this, as I am.
Yeah, I can tell you are too. Well, as I like to say, I was sort of a latchkey child. Both my parents worked, and in those days you had like 3 channels, but I would sit there and watch the old movies on, I don't know what channel, but I loved old movies from the beginning. And I've been a film buff ever since in terms of consuming films and writing about films. I worked for 5 years on the Academy Award Museum in Los Angeles. That was one of the first big film projects I did. And that led me to thinking about this project, because I thought, well, there's a great story here. I remember certain films being made here. I grew up here. I remember certain films being made here, like Fortune Cookie, and those kind of early Kid from Cleveland, that sort of early stuff, and thought, well, there's a history here. And then you start to peel back the onion, or whatever the phrase is, and you realize how many things were made here, and I just got very excited. And by the way, I've seen most of these. I think I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. So it's not like I'm pretty familiar with almost everything that's in this exhibit.
What made the Western Reserve Historical Society choose this exhibit for this time?
It was the right time. First of all, we're coming up on the country's 250th anniversary, and we were thinking about stories that were important to tell. And there are stories like about Ohio or Northern Ohio that people know, the steel making industry or the shipping industry, or Euclid Avenue and the great houses. But this was a story that hadn't been told to any great degree, and yet a story that continues even better today. And we thought, what a wonderful thing to do, to celebrate the history, but also to promote the current industry of filmmaking in Ohio during a year when we're celebrating, the anniversary of our country.
We've had so many, great filmmakers come out of Ohio, like the Russo brothers, Warner brothers. Why do you think Ohio, or in Cleveland in particular, has such incredible filmmakers come?
Because they're like us. They sit there and watch movies all day. I laugh when I was interviewing I worked with Robert Banks, who's a filmmaker here.
Right, yeah.
And we did a lot of interviews, the Russo brothers and Robert Kurtzman and his wife and Harold Rags Crawford, all these people, Tyler Davidson, who's an independent filmmaker. And one by one, they tell you the same story. They grew up watching movies, okay? And they just love watching movies. So at 10 years old, they're watching whatever. They're watching good movies, they're watching bad movies. All these makeup guys watch the late night television shows with Goulardi and all those special hosts that were on. They watched all that junk, which I watched. All those bad
Big
movies,
Chuck and
Crab Monster and all that, and they just were consumed with all of it. Over here, we'll talk about Kurtzman. Kurtzman made the last Freddy Krueger mask. Again, there's actually kind of a bit of a horror tradition in Northeast Ohio, and this is Robert Englund's face mask on a form here. Bob worked on 200 films and worked with everybody from Quentin Tarantino to Spielberg and Stephen King. So he's the master of makeup and horror, makeup particularly, and he lives in Crestline, Ohio.
What do you hope people will take from the exhibition?
I think people know some of the stars, okay? They know the Bob Hopes, they know the Ruby Dees, okay? They know the Halle Berrys, they know the Paul Newmans and Joel Greys, because they're huge names in the history of Hollywood, right? But what we were hoping to do with the exhibition is to talk about the people who are behind the camera as well. So they become very aware of the fact that, along with the Russos who are famous, the Warner Brothers grew up in Youngstown, and Wes Craven, who created Nightmare on Elm Street and all these horror films, grew up on East 65th Street. I mean, these are people who grew up here. And then the other creative people, the soundtrack people. Henry Mancini lived for a few years in Little Italy. But there are all these others who came, Trent Reznor and Mark Mothersbaugh and Screamin' Jay Hawkins made soundtracks for movies. So it's this history that we want to tell behind the scenes as well as in front of the camera.
Do you have a favorite film?
Oh, I have.
And I would think you would have, like me, so many.
Yeah.
It's hard to name, but just give me one and tell me why it resonates so much with you.
The easiest one for me is On the Waterfront. And On the
With
Waterfront.
Marlon Brando?
Marlon Brando. And I think it appealed to me. I was watching it even as a kid. The kind of the loner who does the right thing, and does the right thing even with all the odds against him, including his own family. And he does the right thing. And it's such a powerful film to kind of go against, your quote friends and family and workers, to kind of root out to what's really bad, this kind of corruption of the waterfront. And of course, Marlon Brando. When I was a young guy, I mean, I didn't think there was anybody better in film. And when he was a young guy, he got a little crazy. He got a little crazy as he got older. That's one of my favorite. But I have dozens of others. It's just that's the one that's always stuck with me. The films I love, I've watched 20 times easily. I can watch certain scenes over and over and over again, and I look at it and think, like, I'm actually watching this again.
Right.
My wife has to look at me and goes, "Why do you have that on?" I go, "Well, I just want to see that 10 minutes where they do this and this."
Yeah, there's certain sections.
That it's so good, and I loved Turner Channel, TCM, because what I like about Turner Channel is that they really do deal with the history of movies, and they deal with the history of people who make the movies, and they talk about what's behind them, and the stories are always intriguing to me. Why he got cast, why she was in the movie, why they decided this ending and not that ending. That's always been fascinating to me.
So that's it.
Yeah.
There's a artifacts portion of this exhibit too, right?
Yeah.
Name some of the valuable artifacts.
These are armatures. When you do stop motion filmmaking, like puppets that move, this is one right here, they have to have an armature inside that makes them move. So Justin Cohn, who grew up in South Euclid, made many of the figures for Nightmare Before Christmas and James the Giant Peach. So these are his armatures. We've put posters. These were posters for silent films. The posters were made in Cleveland, and in the early 20th century, like from the teens through the 1940s, Cleveland was the movie poster capital of the world. So it made the great posters for all the films of that era, like you can see, like Charlie Chaplin and others. And we're talking thousands and thousands of films made here by Otis and by Morgan. There's some very big objects in the exhibition, and there's this prop maker named John Zabrucki. And John Zabrucki was born in Warren, went to Kent State, taught inmates at the Mansfield Reformatory, and then follows his girlfriend, this is 40 years ago, follows his girlfriend out to Hollywood and becomes the prop maker for Star Wars, Star Trek, Men in Black, Toy Story, Toys. And throughout the exhibit, we have 5 of his pieces, his laser gun that was used in 80 television and movie shows. And he literally created a factory in Hollywood for making props for Star Trek and Star Wars, and closed it up a couple years ago, and has brought it all back to Ohio. There's going to be a new sci-fi museum in Trumbull County, but they lent us, and he lent us 5 of his pieces. And again, here's a guy that, humble background, and winds up being the primary prop maker for some of the biggest studios and filmmakers in Hollywood.
And you have a jacket for Clark Gable. And a dress for Halle Berry.
Oh, we do.
Yeah. How did you get the dress from Halle Berry?
I wish I could say I met her personally and picked something out of the wardrobe, but it's not that good a story. So we knew we wanted some costumes, and costumes are kind of hard to get because the actors usually don't keep them. They go back to the studio,
right?
Particularly if it's a big studio like Warner Brothers or Paramount. We talked to some people who were like Harold Crawford and others, if he had anything. He really didn't have much. But one thing led to another, and we got a a name at Costume Archives of Paramount. And we said, we're looking for Ohio actors, or, that do you have any costume? And he was so helpful.
Okay.
So Bob Hope, you got an early costume, 1953 from Bob Hope. Paul Newman from Road to Perdition, Terry Garr, who recently passed away, and Halle Berry. And he said, I only have one dress from Halle Berry. And he said, and here's a real costume guy. So he goes, it's kind of drab. And I said, but it's Halle Berry. He goes, all right, you can have it. I mean, I had to convince him because he didn't think, he likes the more, the more showy things. And that it's a beautiful dress, but from things we lost in the fire.
Oh,
so,
yeah, I remember that.
Remember that? Yeah. And so we got it that way. The Clark Gable jacket is also interesting. It's from the Kent State Fashion Museum. And we have a good tie with Kent State. We have a big fashion department here. And so we asked what they had, and they said, we only have the Clark Gable jacket. Well, the Clark Gable jacket is from a film made in 1938 called Test Pilots. And it's Clark Gable and Spencer Tracy and Myrna Loy. But it takes place, huh?
What a cast.
What a cast, yeah. And it takes place at the Cleveland Air Races. So the footage, there's, most of the footage is shot in Hollywood on a soundstage, but there's real footage from the air races where Clark Gable is a pilot, so that's his jacket out there. So and we even got some stuff from that recent film Lost and Found in Cleveland. We got a couple of costumes, but it's I think people like to see what the actors wore.
Is there any collaboration with schools and the students to get them out to Hollywood on the Cuyahoga?
Yeah, there is. We have a very extensive education program here, and they bring classes. And now we've had some high school students in here already, but a lot of them have been have been like 4th grade, 5th grade, and we've also got the ability to bring some of these artists to speak here. Mm-hmm. So David Greathouse, who's another special effects maker who also lives down in the Mansfield area, he's coming up Thursday to kind of talk to, there's a Halloween event here. Anyway, there'll be hundreds of people here, and he'll talk about making special effects. He just made a movie, Greathouse just made a movie in Africa, a horror movie in Africa by an Ohio guy. And I find it fascinating. I find that
it is. Film is totally fascinating.
And it's become so much. Not to go on and on, but it's become easier because the technology has changed. You don't necessarily need a sound stage like you did, in 1950, where you had to shoot on a huge sound stage in California. You can shoot here. We try to do a lot behind the scenes. Again, the focus of this is not just the stars, but the people who make the movies. And so we talked about the writers, so that we talk about writers that came from Northern Ohio whose work either they wrote for the movies or they wrote books that were made into movies. So it's everybody as well known as Harvey Pekar, who did American Splendor, his comic books, and that was made into a movie, to people less known, like Chester Himes here, who made Cotton Comes to Harlem and wrote those incredible movies in the 1960s and 70s. Most people don't know that the Warner Brothers of Warner Brothers came from Youngstown, Ohio, and had early little Nickelodeons there. And that the father of modern horror, I call him, Wes Craven. Wes Craven grew up in Cleveland and started making films like Scream, Nightmare on Elm Street, and all these films that became the kind of standard of horror films in the 80s, 90s, and so forth.
So this exhibit runs almost for a year.
Yes.
What was the decision with that? Because I know most exhibits don't go for a year.
Yeah.
What came into the decision to have it run for that long?
Okay, well, one of the reasons was it was a lot of work. So, I don't want to
take it up.
I don't want to take my baby down after
Right.
it's just been born. That part's part of it, and I think it's an important exhibit, so we wanted to stay up. And then it also coincides, it's just circumstantially coincided with a program that the state of Ohio is doing for the 250th anniversary of the United States, which is 2026. And that program is called Ohio Goes to the Movies. And this was being created long before that program was also in the making. And suddenly they contact us and saying, well, we're going to do this tribute to Ohio filmmaking, and your exhibition is perfect for it. So the long and short of it is that I think that begins in April of next year and runs through about half the year, into the fall of 2026. And with that program, each county, I think there are 88 counties in Ohio, at least one theater, and maybe more, will show films made in Ohio or about Ohio. So if you're down in Mansfield, the theater there will show Shawshank, because most of it was shot around our, in Cleveland, they might show Air Force One or Antoine Fisher or whatever. But at every city, Columbus, Cincinnati, small towns, not the big cities, only a town that might have one old movie theater that's still running. Is good.
Motion picture shows.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's perfect. And they've been cooperating with us and vice versa, collaborating, and we've been promoting together. And in fact, the governor came for the opening of the show, Governor DeWine, because he's such a big film buff.
I don't know.
And he was the one, and he and his wife Fran were the ones that kind of came up with this whole idea of Ohio Goes to the Movies. So he came here for the opening night. He had such a good time. I'll tell you one funny story. He won't care. So he's here with three of his kids. They're grown kids, and his wife, and I'm walking him through, and he's like really absorbed with all this stuff. And then he sees in the exhibit we have the last mask of Freddy from A Nightmare in Elm Street. And he goes, "What's that?" And I said, I know you haven't seen this movie. This kid's like, "Dad, it's Freddy." So that was very cute, and he really spoke highly of the exhibition. Sent me a note, and cool. I'm glad he was here. He's just a big film buff.
Like I said.
Yeah.
So, did you make any discoveries while you were working on this exhibition?
Let's see, did we make any?
Something that you said, wow, I didn't know that, or a piece of information.
Yeah, well, you know what? I rediscovered something, which I think...
That's cool. I'll take that.
I'll take a rediscovery. What I did discover is some of these people. I didn't discover them. They're well-known people, but they were new to me, a lot of them.
Okay.
But I think Robert Banks and I love a movie called Uptight. And Uptight was done in 1968.
What about Martin Luther King?
Well, it's at the time, no, it's not King, but it's at the time of King's assassination.
Okay.
So Uptight, I remember it vividly, and Robert, who I worked with on this book. Uptight's made in Huff during the year of unrest in Huff, and so it's made by Jules Dassin, who did Never on Sunday, and Melina McCurry, his wife, and Ruby Dee, and they make a film about black militancy in Huff during the year that Huff and Glendale exploded. And so if you ever get a chance to see it, for a while, you just never could find it. And so I remember Robert and I going like, "Oh, I love Uptight." It's not the greatest movie he made, but it's an amazing movie because it's made in the city while the whole country is exploding after the death of Martin Luther King.
Right.
And so here it is. So I recommend it. I just saw it again on TCM, but you can get it. So that was sort of the fact that both of us thought that film was so important was a sort of rediscovery.
Rediscovery.
Yeah, and then the discoveries are, again, they're the people. I just get amazed at who did what. There are Academy Award winners all along the walls here. You know, everybody knows the Paul Newmans, again, as I say, or the Henry Mancinis. But then you find out that Trent Reznor, who's band here, 9 Inch Nails, Trent has 2 Academy Awards, and he's a rocker. You know what I mean? And so that kind of stuff is very exciting.
Dennis, it's been a pleasure, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on my show, man. It's been an experience.
Well, it's been fun doing it for a fellow lover of the movies and the theater. It's been great.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That's it, Cleveland. We're out. But remember, a true artist is not only inspired, but inspires others. I'm Cornell Calhoun III for TV 20 and Creative Focus. Until the next time becomes our time, be well, be safe.